Hello, I want to talk about the biggest tragedy of the entire DLC, and that's this guy. This guy is literally the narrator for the trailers. He is featured prominently, taking up about half of both trailers, and he's on the box art. Yet he has no fanfare, no nothing in the DLC. He's basically does not exist. I am borderline convinced that this was the original antagonist and final boss of the DLC, and they just changed plans last minute to do this Radon stuff. So, this guy, Mesmer, embodies seemingly the opposite mentality of Mikola. He was betrayed by his mother and had his powers sealed away against his will because, like, Marika was a shitty person who believed in, like, ruling through absolute authority and subservience. So she effectively left Mesmer traumatized and trapped in an area feeling betrayed. And, like, he harnesses flame. He's hateful. He's spiteful. He's not merciful whatsoever. He's basically the literal, like, narrative exact opposite of Mikola. It would make perfect sense if Mikola wants to avenge Godwin and try to bring him back by becoming a god and, like, breaking the rules to bring him back to make a better world and all that. And he, he really wants to go test himself, his philosophy and all that. So he tries to redeem Mesmer. Or it would make like that if you really want Mikola to be involved. I think you should just drop the Mikola stuff, and this should just be a story about how Mesmer saw how all of his brothers and sisters got, all this stuff. Like, they got all these good lives. Meanwhile, Mesmer was tricked into going to war with people who didn't deserve it, and then got betrayed after being, like, physically traumatized and then emotionally traumatized. And, like, this is a story about him building up his army, taking down the Erd Tree in this other dimension, and now he's ready to come back into the main world. An idea that I heard that was really good is you could even have Mesmer just invade the main world and be the one who burns the Erd Tree instead of sacrificing Melina, because that would be a great way to incorporate her into the DLC, because we still know jack shit about her. She still has a whole, like, it feels like there's a whole story with her that's completely unexplored. And this would give you an opening to, go about that more, especially because their name is so similar. Melina is so, like, seemingly knowledgeable on all these people and topics. It would make sense that she would be surprised to see this guy. But it really does feel like he should be the final boss. Like, are you going to tell me that at the very least, it wouldn't be a better story if the story was focused on this guy and his hateful flame growing because of his, betrayal and trauma, which leads more into his snake-like attributes? He's not a bad guy at all. In fact, his remembrance practically outright tells you as much. He's not a bad guy whatsoever. He's just closely tied to the snake, which is seen as a bad symbol. And Marika was so paranoid and authoritarian that because she couldn't remove the snake from him, even with sealing it in him, she effectively tricks him into this banishment. It would make sense that he's incredibly bitter and angry at everything. And that anger leads to his flame. Because, I mean, look, part of his motif is this uncontrollable fire, which seems like a pretty strong metaphor for his uncontrollable hate after being betrayed by the only person he trusted. Through literally no fault of his own. It would also be Elden Ring is a story about identity. Marika and Radagon and their transition and, like, people changing forms within the lands. Like, Elden Ring is a story about identity. But one thing that they never explored was, what do you do about your own self-identity when your own family and everyone around you tells you that you are a freak and they're willing to mutilate you to change parts of you to better fit what they want of you. That is a very real thing experienced by a lot of mentally ill people every day in real life. And it is just completely not touched on in the main game. The main game talks about spiritual identity, gender identity, like all these hot button issues, but it never talks about what if there's nothing wrong with you, but everyone is dead set on convincing you that there is. And the absolute hatred and resentfulness that comes along with that. This character seemingly embodies all of that, and it's like he's like the third, like Ronnie is like, mental, like, persona identity. Radagon Marika is like a gender, like, belief system identity. This character would embody that final last pillar of, like, I'm fine, but everyone, like, societal identity. This guy would perfectly embody that final pillar that was practically untouched in the main game. And when you consider how heavily marketed he is and how perfectly he slots into that role as the final like act of the main motif of the game, it makes perfect sense. And then you consider that his power is an uncontrollable flame and he seemingly hates America and the Golden Order and all of this. It would make total sense that he goes into the main game and allows you to burn the Erd Tree with his power. You know, and then he's like, let's say he's a summon for like the Radagon fight or whatever, allowing him to get his revenge. And again, if you want to have Mikola involved, you can have Mikola temper his flame a bit. Hell, why isn't this guy Mikola's fucking consort at this point? He's also an opposite to Mikola, whereas instead of, you know, loving life or being associated with death, he's more about that bitter resentfulness that comes along with never really getting a chance to live. He would also make a great opposite consort for Mikola. And they could, like, you know, it seems like these two should be good friends because, you know, Mikola shows him the belonging and acceptance, which is all he really wanted. And he finally gets someone who's like, no, man, you're cool. You're fine. And he gets someone who has an opposite perspective to bounce ideas off of. Because a big theme of Elden Ring is that balance is the truth. You know, people like Radagon and Marika, who are so absolutist in their dogmatic beliefs, are destined to fail. Same with people like Ranni, who are so rebellious and hateful from their trauma that they don't want to subscribe to anything. She's practically a fucking Ancon or like an ANCAP. You know, it's funny. You have like... You know, you have fucking Ranni, who's like the embodiment of like this, fuck the system, blah, 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 I'm gonna be violently, like, it's gonna be an awful cold place, blah, 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 blah. And then you have like Marika, who's like the embodiment of like order through subservience and all this shit. And then you have these two, who are like the children who are like taking the center path, where they're like, you need a little bit of both of these ideas, but too much of one is what got us here in the first place. Especially considering that in the DLC, they both see how basically all of the belief structures that the main characters subscribe to are just hokey pokey bullshit from aliens that hold no actual water. But yeah, I just can't believe this guy just shows up halfway into the DLC with no build-up or anything. You just fight more of his knights and you're supposed to be like, oh, is this his fortress? But, yeah, I absolutely believe that the story should be centered around this guy, and either he or Mikola should be the final boss. It should be kind of like a choose what morality you agree with, not a set in stone. Again, it just feels so fan servicey what we got. The fact that this guy has so much marketing around him. Like, hold on, we're going a little bit off script here. Let me go onto the store page. Elden Ring, if we look at this, like, if we look at this trailer, he's featured prominently halfway in this trailer. You know, where is it? You know, like he shows up here, he starts, this is when the narration starts and it's his voice. Then in the story trailer, which considering this is the story trailer, you would assume that what happens in here has the most to do with the story. And it talks about Mikola and how far Marika was willing to go and, like, you know, and yeah, it created the shadow, the opposite. So this DLC is all about opposites. Then as soon as you get here, the entire rest of the goddamn trailer is focused on this guy and the war he waged in Marika's name just to be abandoned. You know, like the tyranny of Mesmer's flame. Where was any of this stuff when we were actually playing the game? It genuinely feels like halfway in the development, they just scrapped their plans and went with this Radon Mikola rape story. And it's like... that would also explain why the DLC feels so empty. Because how much do you want to bet they were going to put a bunch of, like, environmental details about this guy? You would have to fight, like, mad charred hollows, you know, that were the fallout of his war. And then you could also explore the identity of, like, what is it like when your nation and everything around you is stripped and taken from you and you're left with nothing but PTSD? You know, what do you identify with then? Your gods are... You just watch someone kill your gods... and now, like, your nation is gone. Everything you believed in is gone. You can explore the downtrodden, what happens there. I'm just saying, like, it makes too much sense for this guy to be a prominent character that, at the very least, has more than, like, 3 fucking lines of dialogue. Like, seriously, you show up into his boss arena, and he's like, I hate my mom, you foolish Tarnus, you believe it, he's like an edgy atheist. He's like, I hate my mom, and you believe in God and the Erd Tree? Cringe. Let me beat you with my facts and logic real quick. No, not even that. He's more just like, I'm gonna scream an anime power up because I'm so strong and edgy. Like this guy has like, I beat him, me and my friend who I played the DLC with through like the entirety, not like his summons, but just we were sitting in a call together. We both beat him in like 5 tries. Like, he's stupidly easy. He's stupidly fucking easy. He is stupidly underutilized. And when you logically think about it, he should embody everything that a main character makes. I don't know. I just think they really severely dropped the ball with the story here.